Welcome to the Apartment Guys, where we dive deep into all things multifamily investing. Our mission is to educate, inspire, and empower real estate investors to reach their highest potential. Each week, host Tate Seamer interviews high-level guests from all over the industry who are sure to bring valuable, actionable ideas that will propel your career to the next level. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned investor, you are in the right place. And now your host, the Apartment Guy, Tate Seamer.
Underwriting deals is such a major pain point for people. Most don't want to do it, and the people that are good at it are few and far between. That is why after 6 years of being in the industry and buying over 1,200 apartments, using my best-selling multifamily deal analyzer, I created Real Estate Lab, a full suite acquisition software for multifamily investors. We have built a product that helps investors automate their acquisitions and close more deals, all in a cloud-based platform. You can go to realestatelab.com and sign up today using the promo code TAG2 for 10% off your first 12 months. This is David Tupin. Thanks for listening.
Welcome everybody back. Another episode of the Apartment Guys podcast, soon to be the Apartment Gurus podcast. We made that announcement in the last episode as Chelsea Garber has joined the podcast as a regular co-host with me, and we're really excited to go this direction. Obviously, the Apartment Guys didn't fit anymore with the lovely Chelsea Garber on board, so we had to tweak the name a little bit, and I'm really excited for this episode today. I think you guys are going to get a ton out of it. We have my good friend and buddy Brian Briscoe back on the show. One of our very rare repeat performances coming from Brian today. And we were just talking, it's probably been about 2 years since you were on the show. You were one of my first guests early on. And obviously a lot's changed in our own businesses, but your business and my business, and a lot's changed in the market. So I'm really looking forward to catching up, Brian, and contributing as much value as we can to these listeners, especially in the way of like strategies moving forward. Like what are you and I doing moving forward? So anyway, Brian, thanks for joining me, bud. Appreciate it.
Thanks. And I got to say that I am a little disappointed. I was expecting the lovely Chelsea Garber to be here. So
I know it's disappointing when she's elusive, that Chelsea Garber. She's hard to pin down sometimes. She's in Texas today on business.
All right. Well, I'll give her a leave. Now, I've actually known Chelsea longer than I've known you. She and I, what's the proper English? She and I were coaching students together in the same coaching program back, 4 years ago. So she's also a great person, love what she's doing, extremely talented. So
Carl and I are lucky to have her as our third partner.
Yep.
As many of you know, she came on board about a year ago and is our director of acquisitions and our director of design and aesthetics. She has a design company that specializes in multifamily properties called ROI by Design. I'll give her a quick plug there. And you're right. Very talented. Her mindset is rock solid too. She's pretty unflappable and can handle the big boy and big girl conversations when they need to happen.
The Apartment Gurus.
It's going to be the Apartment Gurus. It's not taken, believe it or not. And I struggled a little bit with calling myself a guru. I almost don't even want to make that inference because I consider myself a perpetual student. And there's a lot of people with a lot more experience in this field than me at this point. So that said,
and there's a little bit of contempt towards that name, because there's a lot of people that say gurus when they're nothing like it. But I think you guys are going to rock it. I think I did like the name Apartment Guys. I think Apartment Gurus is going to work just as well because of you guys.
Well, I appreciate that, Brian. And Brian, as many of you know, is the host of the famous Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast, which it has one of the most interesting formats that I've ever come across, where a lot of his episodes are called Ask the Expert series, the Ask the Expert series. And Brian has on a seasoned investor usually, or somebody that's an expert in a particular part of the field, and then has a novice or beginner or even an intermediate type investor that wants to learn from the expert and is able to ask questions, and some really cool stuff comes out of that. I mean, really valuable content comes out of that, because you're bringing in, with my podcast, it's Chelsea and me, and I think we ask good questions and move the conversation along well. But when you bring in different people that have different perspectives than you do, Brian, and it really is a fascinating format. So I highly recommend everybody check out Diary of an Apartment Investor on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or iTunes, whatever it is now. I think it's Apple Podcasts, not iTunes anymore.
I think it is Apple Podcasts now. Yeah, I think they changed that recently, but it's been a fun podcast to do. I mean, not only do you get different perspectives from different people, but you get different questions, and so every time during the podcast episode, I figuratively hand my microphone over to the aspiring investor and let them ask questions, and so today I've actually recorded 2 episodes earlier today, but a lot of the questions they asked were about scaling businesses, were about how do you approach this, how do you approach that. And so, it's a different flavor every time. And a lot of times I have no idea where the episode's going to go when I start. So it's a lot of fun, and it's helped a lot of people.
I love the most recent one with Pili Yarusi.
Yes.
I thought that was so powerful. Her story is so impressive. I'd love to have her on this show. I'm setting that intention out there to manifest having her on the show. She doesn't know me. I think we may have met once at a conference, but I mean, just tons of inspiration too. Like there was a lot of that inspiring educational stuff that feeds us all. And that's why we all come to these podcasts, is to learn and grow and develop personally, develop professionally. And that's what we're trying to constantly nurture and kind of stoke the fire for people that are intent on success. And I know that you do the same thing, Brian. And one other plug for Brian's Friday TGIF multifamily meetup. It is a powerhouse of people that come to that every single week for an hour. And Brian does breakout rooms. There's no presenters. It's just nothing but networking, and the level of professionalism and experience and resources and money and everything else, deals, like it all exists in that group. And if you listeners are out there going, man, I need to network, I need to increase my network, check out this TGIF multifamily meetup that Brian does. Brian, what's the best way for listeners to check into that?
Yeah, I would say on LinkedIn, every Wednesday on LinkedIn, there's a post that goes out, and we're going to have the link to it. So we've changed the Zoom link only one time, and that's when Zoom decided to start mandating passwords, right? But we've used the same Zoom link for probably a year and a half now. So the nice thing is, once you have the Zoom link, you just keep on coming back, put it on your calendar, keep on coming back. But follow me on LinkedIn, and every Wednesday there's going to be a post that talks about the meetup. It's one of the very few automated posts that I have. Most everything else is me and my thumbs on my phone, but that's the best way to get it. And it's surprising. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of people in there. There are people who have done, who have thousands of units in their portfolio that keep showing up. There's a couple of guys who have 8-figure net worths, that show up very regularly, and everybody's looking for something. Everybody's looking for, one of these guys likes to mentor people, and he shows up, and, he's done thousands of units, and he likes to help people. So he keeps on showing up, and, one of the guys with the enormous, balance sheet does a lot of key principle on deals. So he'll come in and he'll help people meet the lending requirements for their loans on a commercial real estate, on a multifamily project. And so, he's in there. So there's so many people that can just add value wherever you're at, that it's just amazing. And I was very fortunate to see that meetup start snowballing and just get bigger and bigger and bring in more and more really solid people. So very fortunate.
It really is a do not miss in my book, especially if you're in the network growth phase, which we all should always be in.
Yep.
And the whole your network is your net worth idea is so true. Like, especially in commercial multifamily, this is such a team sport. We say that a lot and it sounds like a cliche, but it's like, you're never going to have the ability, you're never going to have everything you need on your own to get a multifamily deal. I shouldn't say never. I'm sure there's people out there that do, but for the most part, almost everybody I know that does this space is in partnerships and multiple partnerships, and lots of them in a lot of cases. And the ability, like Brian said, to have a key principal come along and have the net worth, liquidity, and resume that's required by the lender to get the loan, that is powerful stuff. Yeah. And these places are these networking meetings are in my opinion, the number one best. It's like LinkedIn on steroids, and with face-to-face contact and people really interested in helping you, and authentically interested in that. And
I like that. LinkedIn on steroids. I mean, LinkedIn's a great place to meet people, but just sitting on the other side of a Zoom screen, it's so much more conducive to building relationships, to actually see people. I mean, ideally you sit, face to face somewhere, but I think in the world we live in right now with people, the lovely thing about networking events like this is you can meet somebody across the country, have literally a face-to-face meeting, through Zoom, and meet all kinds of people that can help you get to the next level. And that's what that event's about.
Yep. So 11 a.m. Mountain Time. That's how I remember it. 1 a.m. or 1 p.m. Eastern Time on Fridays is when that event takes place. So Brian, let's catch up for a minute. We've obviously caught up personally, and we stay in touch and get to see each other at conferences, a few times a year and that sort of thing. Since we had you on the show, you've retired from the United States Navy and
Marine Corps.
I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, that's a terrible mistake, isn't it?
I know. It's like I got slapped in the face, but
dude, I'm so sorry.
No worries. No worries.
Let me take this foot out of my mouth for a minute. So retired from the United States Marine Corps. Brian actually worked at the Pentagon. And thank you again, Brian, for your service, your career how were you 20 something years? There?
20 years and 8 days is the answer. Yeah. They make you retire at the end of the month. Otherwise I would have retired right at the 20-year mark, but 20 years and 8 days is what I ended up serving. And,
and we appreciate your service, and many of the listeners probably know, I think the world of you and respect you just for who you are and how you do things and whatnot. But obviously the level of service is tremendous. And so, I'll speak for my listeners. We're all appreciative.
Thank you.
And you've got, I remember the countdown.
Yes,
I remember you saying, you were counting the days, buddy. And then I remember the day that it actually happened and you retired. And then I remember all this facial hair growing after that.
It just sprouted out. Incidentally, for the listeners, I mean, Tate's in Salt Lake City. I grew up in Salt Lake City. If you're listening and not watching, I am wearing a Utah shirt, and I have a little bracelet on that my daughter made for me that also says Utah on it. Right. Yeah. So I'm a Salt Lake City boy at heart, but the first thing I did when I got to Salt Lake is I picked up the phone, called Tate, and we, gathered around a table and had lunch together. But that was about this time last year. Actually, it was probably June, July, actually, but it's anyway, long. Yeah. Enough said on that one, but
it was time flies.
The countdown, that was, I've almost forgotten about that. I made it a goal that, multifamily would get me out of my W-2. Part of the reason I stayed 20 years, and I didn't realize this at the time. It was kind of like one of those clarity moments looking back. But part of the reason I stayed in the Marine Corps for 20 years is I was afraid of getting out and restarting something else. I was afraid of, I have 5 kids, and I was afraid of struggling, and the Marine Corps gives you a nice steady paycheck, the golden handcuffs, you're going to get paid on the 1st and 15th of every month. Right. So anyway, I got to a point to where I realized I needed to get out, and it was, I started focusing on multifamily, and that countdown was to remind me, how many days left do I have before I need this multifamily business to support my family, and some people looked at that countdown. Do you really hate the Marine Corps that much? No is the answer. The answer was, that was my daily reminder of, I've got, 722 days left. The countdown started at about 1100, but I had about a 3-year runway when I started jumping into multifamily, and it's just like, okay, I've got 1100 days until I'm going to leave this nice steady paycheck, and I need to build a multifamily business. I need to build, other streams of income to be able to compensate for, dropping this W-2. And that's what that countdown was for. And, I was fortunate to be able to, but before that countdown ended, I was fortunate to be able to, have a long enough runway, enough money in the bank, and enough income coming in that I never had to worry about it.
Yeah, that's a blessing. And you've been a mover and shaker in the multifamily space since before your retirement. I mean, the meetup group was going on long before your retirement. And did you start the podcast before you retired?
Yeah, I did both. Both of them actually happened right after COVID shut things down. And I was going to a lot of, so the TGIF one, I was going to a lot of the DC area meetups, so okay. There were 4 or 5 of them that were all, once a month meetups. And so about one night a week, I would go to one of these meetups. And when COVID shut everything down, obviously those all dried up. And a lot of the meetups at first just said, hey, we're going to wait to see how long this COVID thing shuts things down. And nobody immediately went to Zoom. And I remember the last week of March of 2020 was when I started the TGIF meetup, right? So we've been doing it for 2 years and 2 months now, but it was just one of these things where, I had my networking cut off, and I'm like, how can I get this back? How can I still get the benefits of networking while I'm staying at home? And I remember, Zoom was still kind of new to me. I did a little bit of research. I figured out, oh my goodness, they have these breakout rooms. I'm like, I can do this. And I'm sure other people figured it out, as well. But, I started doing breakout rooms, and I'm like, hey, we're going to put a bunch of people together. We're going to do breakout rooms, and we're going to call it networking, and it just took off from there. It really did. So yeah, that was right after COVID shut things down. Everybody was spending a whole lot of time at home. And then the podcast was officially launched on July 1st, 2020. And yeah, me, from the Pentagon, I went from a regular, not really a 9 to 5 schedule, it's like a 7:30 to 5 schedule, but very regular, like clockwork, to 14-hour days. I'd work 4 days, and then I'd be home for 4 days, and so it was this really, really weird schedule where, sometimes your 4 days off aligns to a long weekend. Some days your 4 days off are in the middle of the week. But yeah, that's when I started the podcast. That's when I started the meetup, and been fortunate to keep both going.
Let's talk business and let's just kind of cut to the chase and talk about what you're doing now. And you've been investing in multifamily for a couple of years now and have taken down some big properties. Where are you now? And kind of what are you doing? What's cooking in the Briscoe world?
Yeah, so a good question. Thanks. So up until now, I've been GP on 10 properties. We've got a mix of smaller and larger properties. So total of 655 units. We actually just came full cycle on our first one.
Nice.
Gave roughly a 25% average annual return on that one, which, we were blessed to buy that when we did. The markets treated us very well. I think we would have been mid-teens without the extra boost that the market gave us, but mid-teens still isn't bad. But for me now, it's really continuing to do the same thing, and just find other good deals. I've had a really, really good networking presence. I have a lot of people in my network in general. So I post very frequently on LinkedIn, and so for the immediate future, I'm basically going to be partnering with really strong operators and helping bring these really good deals to everybody in my network. So partnering with people who can tackle the really big, tough deals that are going to be really safe investments, and bring that to the people who I hang out with on a regular basis. So that's the near-term future. Podcast is going to keep on going. And what the podcast has actually blossomed into is an educational community that we run called the Tribe of Titans. And I started writing down some of the podcast episodes, and really when we do once a week, it's called a multifamily brief. It's a 5 to 10 minute episode of me talking about a specific subject. But I started scripting all of these, and I realized that there's a lot of value here. And I turned all of that plus a lot of extra effort into this multifamily educational community. So we bring the networking aspect, we bring the educational aspect together, and it's called the Tribe of Titans is what it is. But that's something else that if any of your listeners are interested in learning more about the syndication process, reach out to me, and I'll let you know how to take advantage of my network.
We'll do this again, but at the end of the episode. But Brian is easily found on LinkedIn, as he mentioned, at Brian, spelled the normal way, Brian. Briscoe is
the normal way.
Exactly, the normal way.
Normal way.
Briscoe is Briscoe.
Yeah.
So go find Brian on LinkedIn, and I see on Facebook a lot too, and probably Instagram too. So
yep.
So you really got it well covered. And if listeners, just to go back a few minutes, if you listen to what Brian's strategy currently is in terms of how he's doing business, it is 100% based on partnerships and network. Like everything you're doing, you're finding good deals from other syndicators like myself, for instance, or countless others, and you're able to pick the cream of the crop and just cherry pick. This is a great deal. I want to do this, and you're able to take that to other people in your network who are investors or no investors and are capital raisers, so to speak.
Yeah, and
that's how Brian's doing business, and it's really not a whole lot more complex than that. Now there's underwriting to be done. There's OMs and other documents to put together, and Brian, and we were talking before we started recording. Brian's figuring out right now that being solo and is can be challenging, and something tells me something tells me you're going to land. Anyway, I won't even get into that.
I've had many opportunities to partner, and you said you wouldn't bring it up, but I will. I'm leaving. I just left a partnership that I've been with for several years, and I'm a little reluctant to partner right now. Nothing bad really happened, but I think it's like when a relationship ends, whether boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, marriage, everyone's reluctant to get into the next partnership, but I'm kind of in that period right now.
Understand that. Yeah, that's totally understandable.
But, and talking about, the philosophy, I kind of looked at, what is my own investment philosophy? Where do I want to invest? And I started realizing that the operators in the markets are probably the two key things. that I need to look at. The operators and the markets, because those are the two biggest determining factors in how a deal is going to perform. And I started looking at, what do I want to invest in? Where do I want to put my money? And it turns out that I can do the exact same thing and give the same opportunities to everybody else. That's one thing I really like about it, is multifamily does create a win-win scenario. And I can be diversified over several markets, be diversified over several operators.
Right.
I think that's the best way to do it. And so, yeah, for the near future, that's what I'm building my business plan around, is being able to, give the same diversified opportunities with great operators and great markets to, people in my network.
Are you thinking of doing a fund at all? Have you thought about that?
I have, yes. And, I'm talking with a guy that I know soon about it. I think, recently leaving a company there's a lot of infrastructure that has to be in place on a fund. I think near future, I'll be doing co-GP opportunities where I'm just a member of the GP, bringing investors in. But yes, a fund is definitely, in the future, where, we can bring investors into the fund, and then we can take that fund and invest with, some of the high class operators throughout the country who are operating in markets that I can get behind.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, listeners, what we're talking about here is one of the main roles that you can get into the GP by doing, and that is essentially raising capital. Now, you need to have other responsibilities and roles on the GP as well. You need to be an active member of the GP and be participating in the asset management aspect of the business, generally, is how that works. However, if you happen to have high net worth individuals with cash to deploy and a need for that in your network, this is a tremendous value that you can create. We currently are working on 3 new deals in Columbus, one of which we've talked about a lot on the show, and 2 other larger deals. And we have plenty of room in our GP and in our opportunities for somebody like Brian or you, the listener, to come in and partner with us, and the form of bringing capital. And that can be your own, it can be other people's. And typically there's a threshold that you need to hit to get on the GP. It's, it's more than $100,000, let's say, and less than $1 million.
Different with every operator. I'd say most people, you need to be able to bring about $500,000.
$500,000,
yeah. I was talking with one guy last week that I really respect, and he's doing really, really big deals. His minimum threshold to be in the GP was $5 million. So, they're in a whole different class, all by themselves. But I want to get there eventually. Definitely want to get there.
Let me just ask you kind of an out of left field question. Have you done much networking or exploring options with like family office type sources?
I have not yet. I've talked with a couple of people in the family office space. Most of them have, very high expectations, kind of a really big hurdle to get over for the operators as well as the deals, So, the biggest deal that I've been involved in right now is an $8 million purchase price. On that particular property, we needed to raise $4 million, and that was well within our wheelhouse. And, but I think once you get to a certain deal size, that almost has to be built in. You have to bring in a couple of checks that are 7 figures, but the family offices and the private equity groups that I've talked with, are all looking for something really similar. They have their own investment criteria. They're looking for solid operators who have a lot of experience, and they're looking for a certain type of deal. So it's just a matter of finding the right group that is a fit with you as an operator and with your business plan.
Yeah. And typically the family office source, they're going to be looking to write checks around at least 5 million or more. So, but again, listeners, you just never know who right? Like, we all know so many more people than we realize, and we have so many more connections to money sources than we realize. And if you really start, kind of pounding the pavement in your own head around like, who do I know? Who do I know? And who do they know? Like these family offices have hundreds of millions of dollars, or at least tens of millions of dollars that they need to deploy. Yeah. And they need a home for that stuff. They need yield. And so you providing them opportunity is doing service to them and is enhancing their business and their lives. So if you can get into that mindset of, I'm not looking for money, I'm not asking for money, I'm looking for conversations. I think Pili Arusi on your show said this. Yeah. She said, I'm looking for conversations and I'm looking for relationships, right? Like you are forming rapport and relationships first with these people. And the more personal that you can make those, and the more authentic you can make those, the better. One question I always ask people when I'm getting to know them, no matter who they are, is like, what do you do for fun? You live in, Twin Falls, Idaho, or Columbus, Ohio, and what's cool there? Like, what does your family do? Like, what do you guys do? Where do you go on vacation? Like, stuff like that is gold, guys, because it will endear you to these people if you do it in an authentic way and you present yourself as genuinely interested in them. Yeah. And you should be, right? This is somebody that you're hoping to do business with, and you need your value system to match up with yours, at least be complementary and have it be a good match. And this is the other thing I'll say, and then I'll let you talk, Brian. Yeah. This is a long game, right? Like these investor relationships aren't necessarily going to materialize on the first deal that you present to them, or even the second deal. And like Brian said, people are looking for a lot of times specific criteria. The more you get to know them, the more you get to know that criteria. So that's all I got, Brian.
I'll piggyback off of that. Just a real example. I mean, when I was working at the Pentagon, there was a guy who lived in Northern Virginia who offered to buy me lunch. And, I'll be honest, going from the Pentagon to any place, for lunch is not convenient. You got to change out of your uniform. You got to, in this case, it was either, hop on the metro and go 2 stops down, or walk for 20 minutes, either way, depending on when the metro comes in, it could be 20 minutes if you take the metro. So it was not convenient, but I agreed to do it just because I realized a long time ago, you never know when you're going to meet that person, you never know. And I've taken lots of lunches like this. I've taken lots of, phone calls, but that particular guy has been, instrumental in a lot of things to me. He's been somebody that I've been able to call when I have issues. He's been somebody that, and he's super organized. And if he's listening to this, he's going to know exactly who it is. I mean, I remember the first time that we met, he's like, hey, can we set up a call 3 months from now? And I'm like, yeah, sure. He's like, how does, August 15th at 3 p.m. sound? I'm like, well, I'm open right now. I mean, wow.
I can't say no to that, right?
And no kidding. And to exactly, at the time he said he was going to call, he called, and I had completely forgotten about it. It was on my calendar, and I saw he was calling, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. But we've had like monthly calls since then, but it's turned into a relationship where I'm excited for the future. We've partnered on a couple of projects already, and we'll probably partner on a whole lot more. But you never know. You look for those conversations, like Pili said, like Tate's saying, look for those conversations, because you never know when you're going to find that one person. Yeah. And I've been fortunate to find a lot of people, through conversations. And I mean, my Calendly is typically booked out for several weeks in a row, and I'll do up to five phone calls a day with new people. And I've had people recently reach back out to me and say, hey, there's nothing available on your Calendly for 2 months. And like,
sorry,
open up some new times. But anyway, always have conversations.
Yeah. And on that note, Brian and I both have active Calendly links. And not to speak for you, Brian, I love to hear from listeners. I love to have 15-minute conversations, 20-minute conversations with listeners, no matter where you are in your business trajectory. Even if you're at the very beginning, especially if you're at the very beginning, I would love the opportunity to chat with you. Feedback. And no strings attached. I'm not looking for anything. I just love to help, and I love to see people grow and progress. And I know you do too, Brian. And so is that invitation there for you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'll send you a link to that you can put in the show notes, and anybody who's interested can basically set up a call with me.
Yeah. And again, like, guys, like, if you're listening to this right now, you're here for a reason. And if you've listened this long, you're doing a really good job, and you're doing good work. And Brian and I both just said, call us, set up a meeting with us. And again, we might not be the most experienced syndicators out there, but Brian has 10 properties under his belt. That's legit. We have, as a company,
more than one.
We have, we have $38 million under management right now at Greenlight. So it's not huge, and it's not, there's plenty of people with way more than that. And that said, hopefully I have something to offer, and I think we do. So
you make a point. I'm not the biggest syndicator out there. You're not the biggest syndicator out there. There's people with much larger portfolios, but if you're looking to get your first deal done, I can help you get your first deal.
Yeah.
My first deal was 3.5 years ago. I still remember it. Some of these guys with super large portfolios, they get these deals mixed up all the time. It's like, we've got 6,000 units in our portfolio. I don't remember that property.
Yeah, right.
So,
the law of the first deal is a real thing, as Michael Blanc talks about. And if you're trying to get that first deal done, it's everything right now. That's what you need to really focus on, and partner up and bring in whoever you need to bring in, and give up as much GP as you need to get the job done.
Yeah.
Brian, we're running out of time. We got about 5 minutes. I want to get your thoughts on the market. And
good question.
I mean, if right now, as of this is May 18th that we're recording this, 2022, we are experiencing, and have experienced for the last 6 weeks or so, huge volatility in the interest rate in the debt markets, not just with interest rates, but also with LTVs and other requirements that lenders are having. Things are changing. Obviously, we are in an inflationary environment right now, apparently, and it's anyone's guess as to how that really is panning out. But what do you see happening in apartments? What are you looking for, and what's your kind of strategy moving forward?
When I'm in situations like this, I always try to go back to fundamentals. I mean, the S&P, one thing that I was looking at right before we started recording, the S&P today is down 4%.
Wow.
Today, 4%, right? And that's huge. That's more than a lot of people hope to, make in a given year on an investment, right? But I like to go back to the fundamentals. And a real quick story, a guy that lives close to me here in Idaho Falls, basically talking to him a couple months ago, and he mentioned that his first home cost $80,000 in Santa Barbara, California.
Oh, wow.
Right. Yeah. And he mentioned that the guy's probably late 60s, early 70s. He's like, I couldn't imagine paying $80,000 in the early 80s on a home, but I did. And I like to reflect on that conversation. 30 years from now, we're going to look at real estate prices today like we do on that $80,000 home, because that $80,000 home right now is probably worth $8 million. And no kidding, it's probably worth $8 million. But I think the fundamentals are still strong. Why do you buy real estate, and why do you buy multifamily? It meets a basic human demand. People have to live somewhere. You have to have shelter. It's a very, very commonly studied subject in psychology. People have to have shelter before they can move to any other any other level of actualization. But so you're providing a basic human need. There's also a scarcity of shelter, of housing units in the nation right now. I've seen reports between 3 and 5 million housing units short nationwide.
Right.
Most metros, like Salt Lake City, is one of them that's got a huge supply issue. There's not enough supply to meet the demand. So when you put those things together, it's still a strong market. And then you add inflation in. I mean, it's like you said, it's May 18th, a week ago. The inflation numbers were released and it was like 8.3%. So values are going to go up. And when you can buy a property, and a lot of people are complaining that interest rates on multifamily are in the high 4s and low 5s right now. Well,
Right.
They have been, for most of the last decade. They were, most of the last 2 decades, they were around 5%. So we're still at historically low interest rates.
Right.
And if you can get money at 4.7% or 5.1% and the inflation rate's at 8%, you're still making money,
Right.
regardless of what the cap rate is, you're still making money. And that's a lot of people are looking at the cap rate versus interest rate, but you have to bring inflation in as well.
Yeah.
When you look at cap rates with inflation, I'm starting to look at what is the cap rate a year from now, assuming 8% inflation.
Right. Because your income's going up that much.
Income expenses are going to go up
Right.
by 8%. Your NOI is going to go up by 8%.
Right.
And so without doing anything, 1 year from now, you're going to have an 8% boost to your NOI. And now you look at your cap rate versus your interest rate, and there's arbitrage there. There's a gap there where you can actually start making money. So I look at all of that stuff coming together, and even with rising interest rates, they're trying to curb inflation.
Right.
Once inflation is under wraps, interest rates are probably going to come back down because they're probably going to start a recession. They're going to have to kickstart the economy again. But
Right.
long-term, real estate still is a fundamentally sound investment.
Yeah.
There may be some short-term things like rates. There may be some short-term things like hopefully inflation short-term that impact the viability or impact how good it looks today. But if you look back at real estate over a 5, 10, 20, or 100-year period, the answer is always buying now makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, people make fortunes in any economy, up economies, down economies, and flat economies. There are people doing good deals all day, every day, and that's going to continue. So, dude, I hate to do this because we're both out of time, I know, here at the top of the hour, but really got to wrap things up. Any final words of wisdom or thoughts for the listeners as we kind of wrap this up?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to what you said. We just both offered, hey, if you want to learn more, give me a call.
Cool.
I've done that before on podcasts, and one particular time it made a world of difference.
Cool.
So you may get something out of it, you may not, but you never know. Just take a chance.
Yeah, and you probably will. Really, you probably will. I mean, Brian and I have a lot of actionable ideas because we've taken a lot of action, and we formed a lot of relationships and connections and partnerships, and we know how to do this. So,
and we've recorded a lot of podcasts too.
Right.
So we've talked to a lot of people who have had good ideas.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
That's not nothing.
That's right. That's totally right. So, all right, sir. Thank you again for being here with me today. I love this. I wish we could do this every month, but listeners might get tired of the two of us every month. So we'll definitely circle back around, in maybe a year or so on the show. And in the meantime, you and I will stay in touch and hopefully get some deals done together.
Looks good. Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Tate.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you, listeners. If you've listened to another one of these till the end, just pat yourself on the back. That's good stuff. And you're doing good things to feed yourself and feed your business, and it's gonna work out. These things do pay off. They really do. So feel good today, guys. On that, thanks for listening, and we'll check you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for listening to The Apartment Guys with Tate Seamer. Tate and friends are grateful to have you as a loyal listener. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, rate, review, and share with friends on your Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or any other podcast platform. Also, check out Tate's YouTube channel for videos of many of these episodes and more. Until next time, take massive action steps and rock on.